Amen. Now I would like to call your attention to the first chapter of the book of Job. As as Elder Paul taught this morning, he preached and he talked about how what he had wasn't really what he had on his paper. He allowed the Lord to talk. Well, halfway through the week, I had a sermon. For some reason, I couldn't send it to VAM. It just wasn't acting right. So Thursday, he said, no, that one you did, that's fine, but it ain't for this Sunday. So he gave me another one. I said, Lord, I wasn't planning on using that one for this Sunday. He said that wasn't in your plans either. What I was working on was a sermon for my younger brother. I'm not going to say I lost him because he's not lost. He died in the Lord, so I know where he is. So I was working on a sermon for that. And I had entirely remembered God in your bad times. But this morning with Deidre, she gave me a whiteout with her worshiping. And I had to scratch out remembering God, and I put worshiping God in bad times. See, that's what he's calling for. See, because if you only remember him in bad times, a lot of times we begging. But when you worshiping, he already know what your needs are. So in that first chapter of Job, we're going to start at verse 14. And it's amazing how that conversation went. All I want to know is, Job, how do you get this information? Did Job hack that line to glory? In that 14th verse of the first chapter, it said, and there came a message unto Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the asses feeding beside them. And the Sabines fell upon them and took them away. Yea, they have slain the servants with the edge of the sword. And I only escaped alone to tell thee. And while he was yet speaking, there came also another. And he said, the fire of God has fallen from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them. And I only am escaped alone to tell thee. And while he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, the Chaldeans came out 3 bands and fell upon the camels and carried them away. Yea, and slayed the servants with the edge of the sword. And I only am escaped alone to tell thee. You may be seated. When I looked at that text, it reminded me that bad news travels fast. In the span of, in our imagination, less than 5 minutes, here's the richest man in us. And we really can take that to heart, because only us know us. Said that the richest man in us lost all his possessions, all his net worth. My mind went back to the great crash of the stock markets in 1929. I'm not that old, so I only read about it in books. But I did remember the fall of Enron and how the folks were taking their lives because everything they had, they put their faith in the crooked E. Here Job, to give you background on the story, in that first chapter said that was a meeting in glory. And the sons of God presented themselves to God. And Satan was in the midst. You know, it's strange. We think because we belong to the Lord that Satan won't visit us. Well, if he'll show up in glory, I ain't going to say unannounced because nothing comes to God unprepared. Uninvited is more like it. But if he'll show up and like we used to do in them younger days, how we crash a party, Satan was crashing his party. And he was popping off. So in the middle of that meeting, God stopped getting updates from the sons of God to ask Satan and say, what you been doing? In the word of the street, player, what you been doing? You know, everybody else dressed to report, and I know what they're doing. But you didn't come dressed for this kind of meeting. You came so you could be seen. You wanted to be here. So what you been doing? And he told me, I've been going to and fro. seeking who I can devour. Not who I can enhance or help, who I can devour. So if you think you're the only one Satan's attacking, he's doing his job. See, the key is when Satan is not attacking you, it means he already got you. So if you're not going through some hard times, Satan already got you. But as I looked at this, I remember one of my former pastors preached on that. When God asked him, had you considered my servant Job? Perfect and upright. Not that he was perfect in the way he did, but his perfect meaning he had a pure heart. How he loved the Lord with his whole heart. He said, have you considered my servant Job? When you're going through hard times and struggles, every now and then maybe God recommended you to Satan. Have you considered my servant Deidre? I'm going to tell you, she's some kind of people's. She loves me with her whole heart. And Satan popped off back and said, he ain't worshiping for nothing. You got his pockets fat. You know, he a shot caller. He'll move and shaker. And the only reason he worships is for the stuff you give him. Can you remember? Can you worship God in bad times? See, it's one thing to have everything looking nice and neat. Your life is all manicured. Your ducks are in a row. You have no problems. But can you worship God in bad times? I really put in your bad times. See, because right now during pandemic, a lot of people had bad times. But until that COVID attacked you, your bad time wasn't the same as other folks' bad time. Can you worship him? And I had a subtitle said, cancel the pity party. See, sometimes we have so many woe is me's that we act like we're the only one that trouble visits. My brother who was taken from us less than a week ago was in the image of health, minding his own business, working. But the Lord said, it's time to come home. And through a tragic accident, he was called. But we look at death as something hard. But God said, this is my form of transportation. It's only two that recorded in history that did not have to take this means of transportation. He said that was Elijah and Enoch. He said everybody else had to get on this bus called death. So when he called my brother home, it hurt me, but it helped me. Because we had Pastor Dennis, Elder Paul, Elder Wayland, Minister Frank. We had just finished a course, and the topic was dealing with trauma. When I mean we had just finished, we had just closed out our meeting at 9:30. At 9:45, I got the call. He was saying, I'm getting you prepared to deal with trauma. But can you worship me in bad times? See, while you think you're the only one, you ain't the only one. Because while you're crying, there was 19 children that lost their lives. While you having your own pity party, there are some 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds. Your brother was 60. So he had 5 times that time on earth. He had a chance to see his children and grandchildren. These will never. So can you worship me in your bad times? We got to remember what the devil meant for bad, God meant for our good. Because in Romans 8:28, he's saying we know all things work together for good. To them that love the Lord, to them that are called according to his purpose. Can you? And I was looking at that, I saw the baseball analysis. In that 14th verse, when it says, and there came a messenger unto Job, and the oxen replied, he gave all the background. You know, I want you, Mr. Job, I want you to know, we were doing our job. This ain't on me. I guarantee you, these teachers in Uvalde said we were doing our job. We were educating the children, and that fell upon the children. See, sometimes we try to get the blame off us, but God will use you to carry forth his work. It says, strike one, he says, and the Sabaeans fell upon them and took them away. And yea, they have slain the servants with the edge of the sword. Wait a minute. You notice he didn't say they slain all the servants, because he escaped. What grief did he carry that he saw all the servants slain? And he's the only one. He was going to deal with, was it PSD? He was, because he wanted to know, how come I'm the only one that got away? There are some children in your valley that are wondering the same thing. There are some parents right now wondering the same thing. Lord, it was 600 children in that school. Why did my child get killed? Or that parent said, I told my daughter I was going to pick her up in a couple of hours. Normally after the services, I take her home. Why didn't I take her home? So she's dealing with it. But see, these are appointments that only God makes. You can't cancel those appointments. After every program, she said, I took my child home. And I told her I'd see her in a couple of hours, which you did. You saw her in a couple of hours. You never said she would see you. See, we try to give God instructions on how to do his business. And when Job was being told this, it said the loss of his possessions, being the richest man in Uz. What is the replacement cost of the stuff he lost? Well, it said in verse 14, he said he had 1,000 oxen. And they tell you oxen are counted in pairs, so it means two. So he roughly was really 2,000 oxen. And so in today's value, that'd be roughly $325,000. He had 5, and don't think, I'm not cursing, but this is what that animal's called, a she-ass. That's a female donkey. So he counted up because she could produce offspring maybe. It says, and including the males, that's about $25,000. That beast of burden don't cost too much. But they was talking about how these folks fell upon them. If I got all my possessions, how come I don't have no protection? Because I guarantee you, almost everybody's car in the parking lot got an alarm on it. When they was getting out of the cars, you heard beep, beep, beep. Everybody protecting their protection. But that crook can slide under your car and steal your catalytic converter with your alarm on. That's how the enemy attacks. He know what you got. A lot of times he done installed your alarm system for you. But he knows how to, but because we're putting all our faith in the wrong places. See, can we count the Lord? Can we worship the Lord in bad times? Because like I said, we know bad news travels fast. Said in that 16th verse, it said when he was yet speaking, there also came another saying, the fire of God has fallen from heaven and has burnt up the sheep and the servants and consumed them. And I only am escaped to tell thee. Now we know on the first we're going to enter into hurricane season, but they say they got a hurricane in the Western Pacific right now, the Eastern Pacific right now. So we're preparing for hurricane season. Natural disasters. My mind went back to when Harvey hit, how we saw all that water. And the strange thing, when Harvey hit, my grandbaby was born. And a trip that takes us from this side of town to Grand 99 and I-10 and Katy would, at best with traffic, maybe an hour. It took us almost 3 hours to get to my daughter. Let me pray. To get to our daughter, to have her baby. That national disaster, the elements, and I ain't talking about earth, wind, and fire. See, people of my age think, when they think the elements, they think earth, wind, and fire. But they did have something that came to mind to say the reason. They had a song called Reason. And the word said the reason that we're here. Worship. That's the reason we're here. Not to look and see how everybody's dressed or to catch up on the latest gossip or to talk about people. The reason that we're here is to worship God. It said when that lightning struck, those 7,000 heads of sheep was about $140,000 that he lost. Now, he could be figuring out, man, I'm going to have to call the SBA and give me a small business loan. But this hurt my pocket. But he didn't do any of that. You know, it's strange that in the middle of it, some people really know when to worship. What about us? Do you know when to really worship? See, I can shout when everything's going fine. Like they said this morning, Dee was talking about Michael Jackson and Prince. She was showing her age, because Michael Jackson been dead almost 10 years. But when she talked about how when he first did the moonwalk, and how all of known civilization went crazy because he did the moonwalk. And I tell you, I made a statement once before. Michael Jackson didn't invent the moonwalk. Because if you go to the book of Isaiah, see, the moon copied off of something. The Lord had the sun moonwalk. Just go to that 37th chapter of Isaiah when he was dealing with Hezekiah. And he said, I'm going to show you what I mean. Because he made the sun go backwards 10 degrees. He taught the sun how to moonwalk. Michael Jackson didn't do it. God invented that. And people get excited when man try to copy what God does. The same with the worshiping. We get excited when they add a lot of the glitz and glimmer. But when I was coming up, when times hit, all I knew was the old 100s. Guide me over. Precious Lord. See, I may not have the beats from the instruments, but when I'm in my low spots, I don't need that. I needed the word. Can I worship him when things are going bad in my life? Or in the words, once again, of Earth, Wind, and Fire, can I give true devotion? See, when you worship him with everything, when things are going wrong, I've been reading the book, I don't know who bought it, my wife or my daughter, but it was written by Pastor Michael Todd, and it's called Crazy Faith. And I've been reading it. I'm about a third of the way through. But when things are going bad, can you produce crazy faith? You say, well, nobody got crazy faith. But ask them 3 Hebrew boys. When they was looking at the fiery furnace, and they say, "O King, live forever. The God we serve is able to deliver us. But if not, we still won't bow down." Yeah, death has visited our family again. But it ain't time for a pity party. Because the same God that woke me up this morning, if it's his will, he'll wake me up tomorrow. So I'm not going to sit here. I'm going to worship him like it's my last time. Because he didn't promise me no more than that. It says in that 20th verse of the first chapter of Job, it says, then Job arose and rented his man. He tore his clothes. And mind you, Job wasn't wearing no hand-me-downs. These kids don't know about hand-me-downs. He didn't buy his clothes from the thrift store. They didn't come from Burlington's, Ross, Marshalls. See, he went, no, he didn't go there. They came to him. Job was wearing tailor-made before tailor-mades was popular. But it said Job rented his mount. He tore his garment. Outward sign that he heartbroken. In other words, he said, this for y'all, that ain't for me. He said, I'm going to tear my clothes because I'm heartbroken. But guess what? That ain't the end of the story. He said he shaved his head and fell on the ground and worshiped. All this fell upon me. People are supposed to keep me from fainting. You know how it is. Once again, showing my age. When James Brown used to come on, and he had that cape, and he'd throw that cape back, and they walk up, and they pat him, and like they reviving him. Job tore his own clothes and fell down and worshiped. He didn't say, Lord, bring me my kids back. He didn't say that. Lord, give me my possessions. He worshiped God for being all that he ever needed and more. Say he's a very present help in the time of trouble. So guess when I need him? I need him now. I need you now because right now I can't see my way out. But guess what? You know what's at the end of the road because you made the road. You know what I'm going through. I don't have to do like my forefathers say, come see about me, because he already there. He said, I'm there. I don't have to come see about you. I knew about it before it happened. He said, and Job worshiped. A human sign of sadness, but it didn't say how his heart felt. In my mind, his heart was thanking God for everything he had done. His 10 children. I was telling them this morning that it's 10 of us left. But I'm blessed because there's a lot of folks who don't even start with 10. But it's 10. It's 10 siblings left. There's 5 boys and 5 girls left. So that's something to worship the Lord about. I can give him true devotion because I know where my brother is. Not was, where he is. Because the Bible says, absent from the body is present with the Lord. So I know where I don't have to have tears. Now, he gave us tear ducts because he knows you're going to cry. But I don't have to weep like there's no hope. Because I know where he's spending eternity. I can give him true devotion for the one who gave me everything. Because Brother Job wrote, he said, now unto him that is able to present you faultless with exceeding joy to the only wise God. He put that there for me because he's too wise to make a mistake. And guess what? He presented my brother faultless. Yeah, my brother had some faults because he was my brother. We're from the same bloodline, so I know I got some faults. And if I got him, he had them. But God is going to present him, Jesus is going to present him faultless to his Father with exceeding joy. And my mind says, in glory, Jesus is going to say, Daddy, here's your son. And God the Father can say, son, here's your brother. He's going to give it back to him. That may not mean anything to y'all, but coming from a family of 16, the older 8 raised the last 8. Mama presented you with your child with or without your permission. And there were some requirements that with or without your permission were going to be taken care of. One of my brothers raised me. If mama came home from work, because mama and daddy still had to work with 16 kids. If she came home and found your child dirty or hungry, you going to pay the cost. Now, mind you, she didn't ask you if you wanted to. She didn't ask you if you had time to. She presented that child to you, just as God the Father presented us back to his son. When he said, Father, with exceeding joy, Father, here's your son. And the Father said, and with just as much exceeding joy, Jesus, here's your brother that you're going to take care of. With exceeding joy, to the only wise God to be glory. Amen. Because we coming here to worship him. We're getting this in practice for this time, for the great coronation. When they present him, we get to say, that's my brother. You know how we claim folks. We won't be name droppers. That's my brother, y'all. And everybody doesn't go and say, that's my brother too, you know. He's going to give us that. So when we're going through our rough times, he said, I'm here for you. I'm here to do those things that you couldn't do yourself. In the 21st verse of that first chapter of Job, and Job made a declaration. He said, naked I came out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Somebody on the outside said, man, you done bumped your head. You done went from the richest man and all of us to just one of us. But he says in that next verse, and in all this, Job sinned not. How many of us in these trying times have blamed God? Lord, you wrong, you took, wait a minute, it was his in the first place. They taught me in the Army, when we would borrow things, we would have a inspection, and a lot of times you didn't have all the equipment you needed. So if you happen to see another unit next to you that had it, and you went over there and borrowed it, with or without permission, you borrowed it, it was not theft, because we just reallocated it. It still belonged to the Army. The Army can't steal from itself. So we reallocated. Here God said, I just reallocated my possessions. I let you have it for a little while, and I brought it home. I didn't steal it. It was mine. So I didn't steal your brother. He was mine from the beginning of time. So when we're going through these things, if we don't understand the purpose behind it, just trust the plan. Because he told Jeremiah, I know the plans I have for you. So you can take Jeremiah's name out and put your name. I know when the Father can say, I know the plans I have for you, you know you somebody. What that song say? He knows my name. When the Father knows your name, you are something special to him. He said, you are wonderfully made. I ain't never seen nobody get all caught up behind junk, but let the good stuff. Let's go visit the Coach store. I don't shop there. Ain't nothing in Coach for me. But I know at least 2 people in this room. I ain't calling no name, teacher, but I know 2 people in this room. Well, one of them last name Thomas, but the other one last name is hyphenated. But them 2 would shop and Coach. They know about the finer things in life. And so does your Father. He knows about the finer things in life. Because he gave us his best. He didn't give us a second-class Savior. He gave us the best the world could ever hope for. So we can cancel these pity parties. I blew out the candles the other day. I turned over the table. I smashed the cake. Because it was time to worship. I can worship him now. Because I saw what Job said in the latter years. It said, and God bless his latter years more than his former. And as I looked at that, I remember my brother. He was a cut up coming up. I mean, he was a cut up. He was a kid that he didn't like or didn't appreciate school at an early age. I mean, getting him to school was a job. Because it would take 3 or 4 of us to get him in the car to get to school. One to drive, and at least 2 of us to sit on him while we're driving. So he would stay in the car. Because he would get in the car, and, well, first when he gets in the car, he said, Mama, I can't go to school today. She said, why? He said, I'm paralyzed. He laying down on the floor. I can't move, Mama, I can't move. And my mom would look at my brother and say, get him. And we'd have to run almost to the next block to catch him. For somebody who was paralyzed, he moved pretty good. And we'd have to sit on him till he get to school, open the door, he'd get him walking like ain't nothing went wrong. He just didn't. But his latter years, I saw him, how he became a great husband and father and grandfather. I saw him how, at that time, I didn't have really any grandkids. And his granddaughter was over at the house, and we was at her sister's house, and his wife and the other grandkids were leaving. So he said, you need to go with Mama. She said, no, Papa, I'm staying with you. He said, no, I'm barbecuing. You need to go with Mama. She said, no, Papa, I'm staying with you. I'm riding with you. So I looked at him. I said, so I see who runs this. Because she stayed with Papa. She didn't care what Mama said or what her sister or what her mama said. She stayed with her grandpa. And I said, man, I don't know if I do that. And then you find yourself with your own grandkids giving orders. Because my grandbaby came home the other day and say, Mama said, you taking us to the park. I ain't even open my mouth. Mama say, no, well, they don't say mama, they say Granny. She can't say granny good, they say Granny. Granny said, you're taking us to the park. So I had to take them to the park. And thank you for a hot day, because she said the seat was too hot to sit in, so I got a chance to take them home. I said, now, Papa, I got to go take a nap because it was hot outside. But can we really worship God in bad times? That's all God is asking. Can we call the folks in Uvalde and tell them, even in the midst of your struggle, he's still worthy to be praised? I know you're hurting. He told the Apostle John, he said, write this down. And in that 14th chapter, John, he said, let not your heart be troubled. If you believe in God, believe also in me. Because in my Father's house are many mansions. He said, that's a reason to worship. He said, if it wasn't so, I'd have told you. He said, I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go to prepare a place, I'm going to come and receive you unto myself. My brother noticed that his house was ready. He went and picked up his keys. He went to the title company and picked up his keys. But he didn't have to write a closing check. Because when he got his keys, it said paid in full. He got a mansion now that don't have a house note with it. Now he's just waiting for the rest of us to get there, to celebrate, to worship him in the best of times. Because we worship him in the worst of times. Maybe there's someone, I'm getting ahead of myself. I already told somebody that was going to be on them. We're going to call Pastor Dennis to come up to extend the privileges of the church. They tell me sometimes I try to do too much. But in your mind, you say you can only do so much for the Lord. Because when I was out there in the world, I did everything I thought I was big enough and bad enough to do. Frankie, I wasn't as bad as my brothers, but I wasn't far from them. But now, because I got a big brother who can do everything, I want to do everything like him. I want to be more like him. Because he saw me when nobody else would even look at me. He saw the best in me. When everybody else say ain't nothing to that boy, he ain't no earthly good. He lower than a snake belly in a wagon's rut. That's for the folks who watch Beverly Hillbillies. That's one of Granny's old saying. But he loves me enough. So Pastor Dennis, would you carry on the furtherance of the service?
Let's give him another hand. Appreciation. I was instructed when a pastor or a preacher or elder come up and give the word, not to come behind him and start preaching again or going over the sermon. It's so hard when a preacher or a pastor come up behind a preacher that someone preached their heart out and taught me something. This man taught me something, how to stand. It wasn't easy for him to stand up here. I'm looking at him, but God. Wow, what courage, what courage. It hurts me because I love him so much. Because whether he know it or not, I'm a part of that family. And it hurts. But I have to say it one time, but God. And what we would like to do, and Elder Paul preached it this morning about prayer. And we are praying that if you don't have a church home, and you would like to come to a place that really loves and show compassion to each and every one that walks through that door, we're giving this time a special time to let you know, if you don't have a church home, that you're welcome to come to this place. When I was coming up, they used to say, opening the doors to the church. We're giving you this opportunity. If you don't, we would love